Welcome to the Translational Addiction Podcast, where we decode the innovative research from the Law People Lab at UC Irvine, dedicated to translational addiction studies and developing effective treatments. Today, Arshiya and I are joined by Dr. Ron Broide, the Executive Director of Biological Research at AbbVie Pharmaceuticals and double alumni of UC Irvine. He studied biology at UCI as an undergraduate, after which he proceeded to earn his PhD in pharmacology at the UC Irvine College of Medicine. His research has significantly advanced the field of pharmacology and toxicology, and we are very lucky to have him join our podcast today. Thank you so much, Dr. Broide, for being with us here today. We're so excited to learn about your career journey and hear about everything that you have to tell us. So can you start by introducing yourself and maybe telling us a little bit about your career so far?
So my name is Ron Broide. Right. As I mentioned to you before, I started my academic education at UCI, both as an undergraduate and a graduate. Right. I was an undergrad biology major. Back then, they didn't have micro and neuro and various other things. You were just a biology major if you were interested in science. And everybody who was a biology major was automatically pre-med. Right. Whether you were interested in becoming a doctor or not, you were pre-med, right? And so I finished my career there. I took a couple of years off that I'll tell you about in a bit. And then I came back as a graduate student for the Department of Pharmacology, working under Dr. Francis Leslie. And that's where I got my PhD in pharmacology, and toxicology. It was a double school back then. Right. And so I was academic bound at the time, but ended up going into industry instead. And now I work over across the street, essentially, from UC Irvine, at a company that used to be called Allergan. Right. Maybe many people may know it as the Botox company, among other things. And we have been taken over as much as 6 years ago by a company called AbbVie, AbbVie, which was an offshoot of Abbott, right? And now we're a much bigger company, right? And one of the things that we sell is Botox and Botox-related products, among other things, skin products. We're an aesthetic company, and other things. So that's an overview, right? That's basically how kind of I went through the journey, and I can get into more specifics.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know you said you mentioned you were a biology major, so I want to ask, what got you interested in science in the first place, and why go into pharmacology and toxicology instead of other fields?
Good question. So, biology, I was always interested in science, specifically the brain, right? As many people are. And I didn't know at the time, what I would do. I actually was also very interested in music. I'm also a musician, right? And so way back when I started my undergraduate, I was my late teens, right? I had one of those proverbial forks in the road, right, in my life, whether to become a musician, right, or whether to become a scientist. Well, you know what I chose. But just to let your audience know, just because you choose one pathway in life doesn't mean you can never do something else as well. So I chose to do music as a hobby, right? And I still do music. I actually have a band, an 80s new wave band that I'm in, right?
Oh, wow.
While I work as a scientist, right? Because science will make you a living. Music, you'll be poor, starving musician most of your life. So that's what got me started in science and biology. Why specifically pharmacology? When I finished my undergrad and I was contemplating on what to do next, right, I knew that the way forward was with a second degree, right, either a master's, more appropriately a PhD. When I finished, as I said, my undergrad, I was wondering what I would do, and I decided eventually I would get back in and get my secondary degree. Why? Because that raises your ceiling, that raises your ability to be marketable, right? Um, and so I had already started doing some undergraduate research with Dr. Jim McGaw initially, right? The big green building that you see on campus, that was named after him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the McGaw building. We call it the big green bomb.
Yeah, it definitely stands out.
Yes, yes, it does. And so I worked for him for a little bit, and before I started as an undergrad with Dr. Leslie. And when I came back to graduate school, I decided to join her lab. Now, she is a trained pharmacologist. When I was contemplating on what kind of subjects I would get into, I thought, well, pharmacology would probably make me the most marketable, right? If I knew pharmacology, either that or molecular biology, because back then molecular biology was getting really big and everybody was doing something, setting up a lab, setting up assays on the molecular biology front. But pharmacology is truly the science where you get to develop drugs. And guess where that makes you marketable? In industry, right? That's where they make drugs. So I figured back then, you know what? I might as well get into to do pharmacology. I could always do some molecular on the side, but I'll become a pharmacologist. Right? Uh, that's what got me started.
That's really interesting. I think that's a very unique journey. I did want to backtrack a little. I was really interested when you said you were a musician. What instrument did you play?
So I started playing the guitar back when I was 12 years old, right? And then, I started, stopped a little bit, got back into it when I was 14, as a lot of people do. And then when I moved around and I found myself in New Jersey, actually, with my family. And I started the band back then. I was, again, about 14, 16, I think I was at the time. And I was playing guitar, found a drummer, somebody else. It was always difficult, though, to find bass players. Bass players are very hard to find, right? Because not a lot of people go into that. So when I moved to California, right, when I was 17, 18 in California, and I started a band here, I should say. Um, and back then we were an 80s band because it was the 80s and that was the only music that was there, right? So we were an 80s band back in the 80s. We had two guitarists, right? Myself and somebody else, but we had no bass player. We couldn't find a bass player. So I said to the other guitarists, I said, you continue on, playing guitar and I'll learn the bass and I'll start doing bass playing. And I haven't looked back since then. I love the bass. I'm a bass player, but I'm also a guitar player, right? That's kind of what I do on the side.
Fun.
Keeps both sides of your brain active. So just for your listeners as well, right? Just because you do one thing, just because you get into science and biology and neurobiology and whatever science you get into, that's only one side of your brain, right? That's kind of like the concrete side of your brain. But you got to also exercise the other side, the abstract side. Whether you learn languages, whether you do art, whether you do anything, right? That kind of is more abstract and more out there, non-science, right? You got to exercise both sides of your brain, right? Because otherwise, the other side is starving all your life, right? Starving for some input.
Definitely. I think personally I love to paint, but I have found that I'm a lot better at painting pictures, like kind of duplicating stuff that's already on the internet rather than coming up with my own painting.
That's fine. It's perfectly fine, but you're doing something that's non-science. You're exercising that more, abstract, uh, innovative side of your brain.
Thank you so much for that advice. To move on, I want to ask, you said you did a little bit of research and then you moved into industry. So are there any similarities or any challenges that you notice between or in each industry?
So a lot of people ask themselves, should I get into industry? Why should I get into industry? Academia, right? Both are very good places to get into, right? Um, if you end up in either academia or in industry. In my case, way back when, industry was just kind of starting out. There was a lot of companies, but not much was known about industry, right? I had friends who went into industry, and it was like going into a big black hole, right? You never heard from them again, or if you did, you just you didn't understand what they were doing over there. Um, and so it was a big black hole. And at the time, my thought was, I'm going into academia. I'm going to try to get a professorship somewhere, and I'll be an academician, right? And so I got out with my PhD and started a postdoc, right? First in Israel, in Jerusalem. So flew halfway across the world to do a postdoc in Jerusalem for the Hebrew University. Did that for 2 years with the idea that I would come back and do a secondary postdoc at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, right? And then that lasted for about 4 years. Got a bunch of papers from that, and then after that, I figured I'd start applying for professorships, all over the country. Problem is, when you do that, you are generally going against 100 to 200 other applicants. Many of them already have R01 grants, right? So they're coming into whatever position it is. They're coming in with money. And of course, the school department that they're going into loves that, right? Because this person's already coming in and, they don't have to supply a lot of money to get them started. I didn't have that advantage, right? I tried. I had a postdoctoral fellowship from NIH, but I couldn't get an R01, so I couldn't get into a lot of these positions. I had a couple of positions where I was shortlisted, but still couldn't get in. So I was thinking what to do. I was starting a family back then, and I realized that I needed to make some kind of income, and academia may not be the way to go. So I started applying for some industry positions, but I was still hesitant to go fully into a pharmaceutical company, big conglomerate pharmaceutical company. So I wanted to start by dipping a toe in, so to speak, so to go into biotech industry. Biotechs are small companies that start up, right? They're very lean. You get to wear many hats over there. You get to be very entrepreneurial, right? But the downside is they're here today, maybe gone tomorrow. They lose their funding. That's it. They're gone. And if the pharmaceutical company doesn't pick them up and put some funding in there or buy whatever they're selling, that's it. You're on the street, right? So I started out working in a small biotech company in La Jolla at the time, started by a guy named Floyd Bloom, who is kind of the godfather of neuroscience. Right? He literally wrote the book on neuroscience. If you look at some of your textbooks, right, on neuroscience, fundamental neuroscience, Floyd Bloom is the guy who wrote it. Yeah. And so he started a company, right? A small biotech company. I joined, right? Actually, I remember I was in the lab at Baylor, and I get a phone call, and the woman on the other side says, "Please hold for Floyd Bloom." And I'm like, "Whoa!" I get to actually talk to the guy, and he starts talking to me. He says, "Hey, I just looked over your resume. I want you to start working for us." I'm like, "But you don't know me from Adam. I mean, you don't know me. You haven't interviewed me. You haven't done anything, right?" He goes, "Nah, it's fine. I know everything I need to know. Come on down." So,
Everyone's dream job offer.
right. And without even an interview, that was my interview, 5 minutes on the phone. And so, So we packed up. We moved over to San Diego. We were in Houston, right? We moved over to San Diego, and I was working there for about 4 years or so. They started realizing that they did not have enough funding. Pharmaceutical industries were not interested in what they were selling. So they started laying people off. I was one of those first ones that they started laying off. And then a year later, they closed their doors, right? So now I'm out on the streets without a job, and I'm looking around, and I still don't want to get into pharmaceutical companies. So I found a startup company, UCI, on the UCI campus, started up by a guy named Kelvin G, if you know him. He was one of the professors back when the Department of Pharmacology was the Department of Pharmacology, not Pharmaceutical Sciences. And he was on my committee as well, my graduate committee. And so I worked over there in his company for about 2 years. I also saw the writing on the wall there too. Luckily, before they closed, and started applying for industry. And one of those was a company across the street called the Allergan. Once again, a phone call. They said, we just saw your resume. We want to bring you in. Right. So that's how I ended up in industry. Haven't looked back. Right. One of the things to tell your audience here, just because you end up with a degree, with a PhD, and you end up learning about science, doesn't mean that you have to go into academia. Doesn't mean that you have to necessarily make a name for yourself in academia, right? Remember that you are gaining education on how to become a scientist, how to do science, how to think like a scientist. You can apply that capability, that education, to anything science related, including research in industry, right? So, and if anybody has questions about what kind of research they do in industry, we do hardcore research, right? Both mechanistically as well as to develop products. We are paid basically to develop products, to fill a pipeline, to get things approved for patients out there that are in need, right? But you're doing hardcore science in industry.
No, yeah, that's great advice. I think a lot of people see research and industry as two separate pathways, but no, that's definitely good to keep in mind. So now that you're settled at AbbVie, what does a typical research project life cycle look like? Like from this early discovery to potential clinical applications, and what's your specific role in this cycle?
Well, in industry, when you're doing your research, right, again, you're trying to generate a product, a molecule, a protein. I actually work with proteins, with a protein called botulinum neurotoxin. It's actually a machine, right? And so you're developing new machines, new molecules, right? Maybe new formulations to try to bring through a pipeline, a development, a process, and eventually get it into the clinics so you could try it in human beings, right? If all goes well, and you convince the agencies, the regulatory agencies, the FDA, that you're efficacious, that you're safe, that you're stable, that you you check all the boxes, right, in terms of the manufacturing, right? This is many years, right? And of course, they eventually give you a nod, a PDUFA, and you end up getting approval. In our case, we get a BLA, right? We get a new BLA, a biological license application or agreement, right, for a new product. And so when I started, the group was relatively small, and I was starting out as a bench scientist over there. Eventually, as I grew in the career, I got out of the lab, to my chagrin, right? Because I still love to do science. I'm still an academician at heart. And so I got out of the lab. I started managing other people who are doing science, right? And then they started managing their own teams to do science, right? And what we do, what my group does, so first of all, I come from the neurotoxin research side, right? We research neurotoxins like botulinum neurotoxin, right? There is, in our area, there's an early discovery side, right? A toxin innovation side. And then there's a side that supports everything else. This is my side. We support all these molecules in late discovery going into development. We help to go through stages of development from the research perspective. And then eventually we support clinical research. So sometimes we get products that are in the clinics that come back to us and say, hey, can you try this out? Can you do this? Can you combine it with this? Because we want to know what other clinical studies we need to perform. And then we also support the products that are on the market. So what product do we have on the market right now? It's Botox. We're about to come out with a new toxin, right? Soon as the FDA approves us, a different type of serotype. But for now, we've been supporting Botox on the market with various different scientific studies, right? And we do a lot of competitive analysis. We look at Botox compared to our competition products, right? So that's essentially what we do over there. We make the next generation Botox.
What is something that you wish you'd known earlier when you were navigating research paths? So looking back, what's something maybe that you wish you'd known, something that you'd done differently?
I think I wish I knew back then more about industry. As I mentioned earlier, there was not much known about it, right? And we had somebody in the department who was trying to get us excited about industry because he knew a little bit more. But we were very hesitant because, people went in and they never heard from them again. So we didn't know much about it. I wish I had known more about it. I may have gone into it a lot sooner than I did, right? Maybe right after grad school, maybe right after my PhD, for example. But I think people need to know industry, as I mentioned, is a very good place to go into. Not to mention the money part of it, right? But the excitement of the science, right? What you're doing, actually, in a sense, you're doing science with a purpose. You're there to develop drugs to help people out there, right? There are a lot of unmet needs, a lot of disorders, a lot of indications where people need better, safer drugs out there, right? And you're helping to develop that, to generate that. Very exciting type of prospect in that respect. So I wish I knew more about it back then.
If you were to go back and dig a little more into what industry was like, what other steps do you think you would have taken? Like maybe set up more interviews with people that already work in the field, or researched into companies or anything like that?
All of the above. Actually, no, I would have done more research on it. I would look more into it. I would have interviewed more of friends that went in there. I actually did find a friend that went in there, and I asked him about it, right? He wasn't that positive on it, right, at the time, just because he was going through transitions. But I would have done all of that. Yeah, just gone and learn more about industry. If you're interested about industry, don't be shy. Go out there. It's all online. I mean, back then, there was not much internet, right? Now, everything's online. Job prospects, all of it is online. Just go out there and see what people do, see what industry does. And there's not just one, there are many of them. And there's small companies, larger companies, right? There's a bunch to pick from.
With the direction that science is going in now, what's like on your mind right now about science? Like, what's the most exciting thing or like topic that you're looking to delve into?
So I would say genetic science, genetic therapeutics, right, is making a big splash right now between siRNAs, between AAVs to deliver proteins, to deliver, therapeutics into a cell itself, right, to target it more specifically to a tumor. to target it more specifically to a cell that lacks that gene, right? That is going to make a huge splash as the years go by. It already is, if you think about it. Think about what just happened to us 5 years ago, right? What was that big thing that happened to us, to all of us? Exactly. And think about how science, right, developed a therapeutic that revolutionized not just the treatment for COVID, revolutionized science for treating many, many disorders, right? That's huge. It's huge. And you know, what I thought was funny is the critics, right, of this vaccine, talking about the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, right? It was an mRNA vaccine. The critics said, well, it's too new. You know, they approved it too quickly, and nobody is really going to benefit from this. That's baloney. Sorry, I hope I can say that on here. It was all baloney, because that technology had been around for about 10 years already, right? As they were trying to cure cancer, right? Through genetic therapies and exactly these type of therapies. Now that they were successful, right, with a vaccine, right? You're delivering genetic material into a cell, right, to create a protein, right? One of the proteins on the virus, to now teach the immune system how to make antibodies specifically for those proteins before the virus kills you, right? So now, with that technology in mind, you are going to see breakthroughs in cancer treatments and treatments of all these disorders where they deliver genetic material directly into a cell, targeted into a cell. Number one, that's the first big advance in science. Number two, right, is an advance not only for science, an advance for the entire world, AI, right? Everybody talks about AI. What they don't talk about is how AI is helping research, right? What would have taken us years and years, right, to go through is now being done almost instantly through AI. Discoveries are going to come through much quicker with the coming of AI, right? At the same time, you have to be very careful with AI. Everybody tells you, be very careful with AI, because AI is only as smart as you make it, right? But it may have flaws as well. So, two things, right?
The first part that you were talking about, the COVID vaccine, was definitely very fascinating. I didn't even know exactly how it worked or the intricacies of it.
Yeah, that vaccine, if you read up on it, right, if you read up on it back then, you read up on it now, it was the first time that they were successfully able, actually, I think they've done it before, even before that. Like I said, there was 10 years of research behind it, but it was the first time that they successfully put it into work by wrapping it up in a bilayer lipid vesicle that would get targeted directly to your immune cells, right? Introduce an mRNA in there to create a protein, right, that was on the surface of the virus, so you could create antibodies to it. Very innovative, if you think about it. And it actually was working, right? I tell you one thing. I got my vaccines, right? And then several years later, I ended up with COVID, right? We went on a cruise, right? Everybody was supposed to get tested, but you can't control everything. We went on an excursion. We got COVID, brought it back to my oldest daughter, who was not happy with us. But because we were vaccinated, right, I'm 100% positive that the COVID that I got only lasted 2 days. The symptoms were minimal, and this was a strong strain of the virus. I would have been in much worse shape had I not gotten vaccinated. And many other people, same thing, right? So many of the critics basically believe, you know, this is the way of the world, the natural way of the world. Viruses come and go. You just have to get sick, and eventually you'll develop immunity. This was such a nasty virus, right? This virus killed you within days, right? Especially if your immune system could not handle it, right? This was not something that we could have just done with what they call herd immunity, right? This was something we needed research help, a vaccine, right? That would help us. Once enough people got vaccinated, now you started developing herd immunity, right? It didn't prevent you from getting COVID. People were saying, well, I got vaccinated, or people got vaccinated, they still got COVID. Yes, you're still going to pick up the virus, but you'll actually be able to survive after you get the virus rather than anybody else who did not get the vaccine, right? Once everybody got the vaccine, or most people, right, and we developed herd immunity, now COVID is a thing of the past. The strains are not as strong, etc. We will, mark my word, we will go through another COVID, another very strong virus at some point or another, right? We will have to have that same kind of research innovation that will have to tackle this, but now we know how to do it in a smarter way.
Wow, amazing. Not the possibility of a new COVID, but the fact that we have all these capabilities to actually tackle it.
Right, right. There's nothing we can't accomplish as scientists. That's one thing to tell your audience, right? You're contemplating whether to go into research, whether to go in medicine is also a very worthy place to go into if that's what you want to do. But science in general, right? We need scientists. We need more scientists. We need more innovative scientists. We need smart scientists. We need people who are coming in it from a different perspective, right? Because we will have a lot of challenges. The human race will have a lot of challenges as we move forward, right? And we will need people, human beings, to help us overcome those challenges. It's not all about AI, right? Because AI, like I said, AI is only as good as the human beings that help create it.
I know you touched on this a little. That was amazing advice. But is there anything else that, any other advice that you have for students that also want to follow in a similar path, want to go into industry, want to do research?
As I said, in my opinion, research is the best place to be, right? Because it really is puzzles out there, puzzles, and you get to solve them, right? Which is a great feeling. Even now, I mean, this is decades after I started, right? I still have that that spark, right? That wants to solve a puzzle, right? This is what's keeping me in research, has kept me in research all this time, right? I'm a nerd, right? I'm a science nerd, as many of us are who go into this area, right? And so research is really the place to be because you are helping mankind in ways that not a lot of other industries, fields can do. You're helping people with disorders, people with limitations, people with all kinds of negative capabilities, as well as people, who just want a leg up with some kind of a therapeutic, right? And there are many different areas of industry to go into, right? Whether you go into small molecule research, biologics are making a big resurgence right now, antibodies, devices, medical devices, all kinds of places in research. I want to encourage your audience, right? If you're interested in science, right, and if you're thinking about research, do it. Just do it.
Just to end off, I wanted to ask if I know you explained a lot of your work today, but is there something that you wish people understood more about your work? Like I know how you said you wished you knew more about industry. So is there anything that you want to tell our audience about your work that they may not fully understand?
In general, as I mentioned before, research in industry is pretty strong and hardcore, right? We do just as good, of research. We put in just as much innovation as they do in academia, right? Um, Specifically in my area, right? People think about botulinum neurotoxin, right, Botox, as the wrinkle drug, right? Everybody knows that because why? Because that's what makes a bigger splash, right? Yeah, a lot of people in Hollywood, a lot of big corporate people that you hear about, right? And you look at them, they're like, oh, they probably did Botox, right? But Botox actually has a lot more therapeutic indications than it does aesthetics, right? Aesthetics is the wrinkle removal. Botox started out on the therapeutic side and is still making breakthroughs more and more and more on the therapeutic side with things like spasticity, cervical dystonia, overactive bladders, people with overactive bladders. It's a muscle. The bladder is a muscle. You put in a little Botox, couple injections here and there, and it paralyzes the muscle, right? Temporarily paralyzes it or makes it less contractile. And so now people can live normal lives and not have to run to the bathroom every 10 minutes, right? And then one of the biggest ones that we've now been approved for about 7, 8 years ago is migraine, right? Chronic migraine. There are a lot of people, I'm sure just about everybody on this call, right, probably knows somebody out there who suffers from migraine, right? Some of them, it's so debilitating, right? For these people, they spend days throughout the month, days and days. In fact, most of the month, some of them, right, in their room, huddled on their bed, right, with the shades down, lights off. They can't even interact with family members, with their kids, right? Their life has been taken away by this migraine condition. And so for many of these people, normal therapeutics, right, small molecule therapeutics don't work at all, right? But Botox seems to lessen the number of migraines, the severity of those migraines, those chronic migraines, and it's been approved for this. And we've heard from so many patients now out there with chronic migraine that this has brought their life back, right? They now don't have to spend most of their month away from their family in a dark room. They now are able to go out into the light. They're able to reclaim their life back. So it's one of these conditions that are so huge, right? It's such a breakthrough. I feel so proud to be associated with that, right? And people need to understand that Botox is not just about wrinkle removal.
I think that's really interesting because I didn't know that. I feel like the media or like anyone that ever talks about Botox, it's always just about your face or anti-aging or anything like that.
No, it is, and now it's being looked at more and more for pain, actually, for various pain indications, right? So it's we call it a pipeline in a vial, right? So Botox comes in a vial, small vial like that, right? There's a little tiny, tiny, tiny bit because it's so potent in there, and it's like a pipeline in a vial. Every couple of years, a new indication comes out, right, for this. It's incredible. It's incredible to be associated with it. It's incredible what it can do right out there, right? And keep doing out there. People need to know it's not just for wrinkles.
All right. To end, I wanted to ask if there's anything else that you want to share with our audience, any last messages that you want to leave.
Well, this is a podcast, as I said, for people just starting out in science, right? Starting out maybe in research, in their research careers. Um, I would say, right, you're going to end up with a lot of hurdles, right, throughout your life, throughout your career, right? Don't give up. Don't give up, right? You may have a setback, right? But that's okay, right? It's good to have setbacks, actually, because you learn more from your setbacks, right, from the negatives than you do from the positives, right, in life. I had a mentor tell me this one time, right, and I think it's one of the best advice that I can give anybody out there, right? You experience a setback, you think, oh my gosh, that's it. my career is over, my life is over, that's it. I might as well go do something else, right? Your career, right? Your life and your career as a scientist is not a 100-yard dash. It's a marathon, right? So what happens in that one moment in time does not define who you are and who you become, right? Your career, the span of everything you're going to do, that's what determines what you will become, not just that one moment in time. So don't despair. Don't give up. Keep doing it. Go into research. It's one of the best things out there.
That was beautiful advice. I love the sentence where you said that it's not 100-yard dash, it's a marathon, because I feel like truly as someone on the pre-med path too, like I feel like it's always a constant pressure. It's like, oh, like you're gonna have so much schooling, you want to knock it out of the way. But it's like, no, like you have time. It's a journey.
Exactly. And by the way, research is not just on the PhD side, right? You can get your MD and do clinical type research, right? And that's more with people, not rodents, right? But nevertheless, it's research. It's advancing what we know, right, in science, one way or another, right? Research is the way to go, right?
Thank you so much, Dr. Broide, for coming onto our podcast today and taking the time to chat with us and tell us about your journey so far and share some amazing advice that I'm sure we're all going to carry with us into the future. So it was great talking to you and hearing about your experiences.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And last but not least, if you're interested in learning more about translational addiction science, follow us on Instagram at Translational Addiction Podcast for updates, and check out the infographics and papers on the Lafayette Lab website linked in the show notes. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, you are not alone. Please contact your healthcare provider or refer to the resources linked in the show notes. The Translational Addiction Podcast is a production of the Lafayette Lab at UC Irvine, exploring how to understand addiction and develop effective treatments. See you next time, and thank you for listening.